The one key difference between successful marketing teams and those still looking to break through the noise is a well-defined content strategy. A documented content strategy helps you align your content with your goals and plan your efforts to achieve the desired impact. The thing is, it's sometimes easier said than done, right? The free guide, Content Strategy for the Modern Enterprise from Acrolinks, focuses on the content part of building an enterprise-wide content strategy. Even if you already have a content strategy, there's no time like the present to make sure it's still serving your business goals and growing with your business. Download the Acrolinks guide, Content Strategy for the Modern Enterprise, the ultimate guide to designing an effective strategy today at thetilt.com/acro1. That's thetilt.com/acro1, or find the link in the show notes.
And now, for your listening pleasure, here's Polizzi and Rose, covering the week of media, marketing, and digital content news. This Old Marketing. Take it away, boys.
Well, hello, my friends. This is Robert Rose, and welcome to episode number 354 of This Old Marketing for December 15th, 2022. And with me, as always, my good friend, my colleague, and the only big-ish celebrity I know who isn't getting sued for holding a collectible NFT, Mr. Joe Polizzi. You aren't getting sued, right? You haven't been served yet?
Not yet. But I am listening a little clearer to who's knocking at the door. I'm charging up my Ring
right
doorbell to make sure. That's all. What do you think about that? It's ridiculous that like Jimmy Fallon having the Bored Ape, and there's a lawsuit against Jimmy Fallon for owning a Bored Ape.
It's the weirdest sort of collection of ne'er-do-wells, right? Tom Brady, Jimmy Fallon. Who else is it? It's Madonna, Gwyneth Paltrow. If you don't know what we're talking about, folks, there has been news breaking over the last, week or so that with the implosion of FTX, the crypto exchange, that many of the celebrities that had originally supported FTX, and there were a good number of them, are getting served with lawsuits. But in addition, that some of them, Jimmy Fallon, Justin Bieber, and Serena Williams in particular, are getting served for having and holding Bored Ape Yacht Club NFTs.
Which is totally ridiculous.
It's totally ridiculous. I mean, it's just, it's silly, and they'll go nowhere, but it does, it proves the point once again that when somebody goes, can you get sued for this? You can get sued for anything. The real question is,
you can get sued for anything, even when you do absolutely nothing. So just make sure. Not that I have any experience with this,
and not that this is legal advice at all.
But yes, I have seen in my days that people, none of us on this podcast right now, getting sued for no reason at all with no evidence. It just sometimes happens.
I did go look at the Bored Ape. I went on OpenSea for the first time in, 2 months.
Okay.
And just to look around and see what things like, the crypto dads were going for, and what Bored Apes were going for, all those crypto punks, what they were going for. They are still very high. Let's be clear. They're not 10 cents or anything, but they are way, way, way discounted at this point.
Well, well, it depends on what you're talking about. So let's take 99% of the NFT launches that are out there. Yes, most of them not worth a lot. Those collections did not make it. But if you look at Bored Ape Yacht Club and you look at CryptoPunks, what do you want? You want a 10,000% increase?
Well, that's my point. Is that it's still interesting. It's still
$100,000 to buy a CryptoPunk. It's held its value pretty well. So I would take Moonbirds has done well. Kevin Rose's Proof collection has done well. Gary V's collection has dropped a little bit, but still way above where it first came out. So I think that it's almost the same with I get this conversation with people about Bitcoin all the time. They're like, hey, that Bitcoin thing didn't really work out for you. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's just like, it depends on your timetable.
Sure.
17,000 from where it was, 4 years ago at 2,000 or 1,000. It's not so bad.
Right.
So it's all perspective.
Well,
timing.
It was funny because I actually had this conversation with someone. We were talking about the narrative of media and how it is shaped by time frame. Because the example I used was the market for NFTs. Because if you take away, and I showed this graph to this person, if you take away basically from November, December of last year through about February, and those are rough, right? Maybe October through February.
You mean the run up?
Correct.
Yes.
The huge, the tulip market, basically. Sure. Of NFTs. It actually looks like a pretty normal graph for a technology or a asset class that is rising in value. It's not been astronomical. It's been relatively flat for the last 2 or 3 years, but you have to take away that huge bubble that appeared at the end of last year and beginning of this year to see that. Because it otherwise looks awful, right? It looks like it fell off a cliff. But if you go back and actually look at where it was in 2019 and early 2020, then you sort of compare it to where it is today, it looks normal-ish. I mean, it doesn't look like it's very interesting, to be honest. It looks like it's a very,
You're talking about the NFT
class.
market in general?
Correct. Yeah. Right. The number of sales and the value of the market in that space, which means basically if you take away sort of the hype of October through February, it's like any other sort of normal asset class that gets introduced into a marketplace and grows slowly. And who knows what will happen over time.
Yeah, I always say zoom out. Like, and
right.
Just if you're like Bitcoin first of all, this is not a financial show. But if you take the chart of Bitcoin and look at it in 5-year increments, there's not a better performing asset class in the last 10 years. Of course. If you take away these couple bubbles, which have happened a couple times. I remember when you and I were traveling remember when it first, this was at 16, 17, when it really started to go? We were like, whoa, it's up 2,000 today. It's up 3,000. Yeah, it went that bubble, then it went back down. Then it went up again and went back down. But it never goes down to where it was before. And you're like, wow, this is a really good chart if you kind of zoom out.
Well, what's so funny about that is that I can remember having this conversation with you in 2016. We were at a workshop or something together, and you were in the back of the room sort of playing with this new thing called Bitcoin. And, and I know it wasn't new then, so don't at me.
It was new to us, right?
It was new to us.
Just looking at it.
And you were playing around with it, and you were saying, "Oh, it's 2,000, it's 1,800, it's 2,300," and we were at this thing. And at that point, you and I were both discussing, how do we buy a Bitcoin, right? I mean, it was how do you buy 1 or 2 Bitcoins in that particular case. It wasn't how do you buy 0.00017777897% of a Bitcoin, right? Yeah. It was how do you buy a Bitcoin for $2,000 or $3,000, and then it just sort of went to the moon. So you're absolutely right. It's like the whole conversation about it just changed.
But it's funny, back to the article, the thing with Tom Brady and being in the commercial for FTX and getting sued. I remember those commercials. I watched many of them. He's talking about using FTX the platform. He's not saying you have to go buy Polygon or Solana or whatever token.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of an equivalent. So that's like somebody saying, okay, well, go to McDonald's, go to buy,
well,
I love Nike.
It's a little different.
Oh, because it's securities laws, yes. Little things
well,
like that.
It's securities, this is a news item that we won't cover, but we almost did. I almost had it in the show notes, which is it seems now that they're finding, as they uncover more about this FTX, that they were actually funding all of those commercials, including the airing of the Super Bowl commercial, with investors' money. In other words, with the money that was supposed to be held one for one for value of the accounts. So it's a little skeevy. It's a little like the celebrities that were out there touting Enron back in the day.
But what I like about what's happened with the FTX thing, and obviously the guy is, well, he's going to jail of some kind. He's in jail. He's got all kinds of lawsuits against him. It's about wire fraud. It's about conspiracy to do wrong. You know, all these things that are regular financial services charges. It's not on anything like, it's not on a cryptocurrency. It's that he's fraudulent with the business.
That's true. Yes.
Which is what it is. And I'm glad that if you take it outside of it, it really didn't matter. Okay, yes, this was a cryptocurrency trading platform, but take that out of it. If this guy does this in any other scenario, he's still going to jail.
Oh, sure.
It's the same. It's the same findings over and over.
I loved how Professor Galloway said it on his podcast, where he said, "This is like, but the size of this doesn't really impact the market." As he said, it's almost like there was fraud in the windshield wiper market, and the head of the windshield wiper market main company is going to jail. Yep. That's about the same level of
small. Yeah. But we really talk about it like it is so funny. It's almost like Twitter, which I'm sure we'll talk about later in this episode.
Muskie scent.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We talk about all the things that Twitter's doing, and then we have to realize that it is one of the smaller global companies out there. It's a small media company. And we're talking about this, that it has this huge impact. And it does because of the people that are on it and its influence and Elon Musk. But it's not even, if you look at any one of the other social platforms, they're 10, 20 times the size of Twitter. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Anyways, how's the rest of your week going?
My week is going relatively fantastic, I have to say. It seems like things are winding down quite a bit. It feels like the way that the holidays are falling this year, you have a lot of people who are checking out a bit early. I have had a lot of people this week go, let's just put that meeting off until after the first of the year.
I love that. That's
I
my
do
best
too.
part of
I
this
have
time.
to say.
It's like we don't have to work, do we? No.
Yeah.
Nobody does.
There's a lot of people who are taking the opportunity to go, hey, next week, really, I'm kind of done on Tuesday, and so I'm enjoying that very much, and I'm enjoying getting ready for Christmas, and I'm enjoying getting ready for we're going to go up to our little place up in Montecito and hang out there, and I'm getting into the holiday spirit, I'll put it that way.
Oh my God, I have to tell you, I shared this in my Joe Polizzi newsletter after we recorded, because I recorded last week. I was in Brussels, Belgium, but I'd done my keynote, but Pam and I didn't get a chance to go and check out all the sites yet. Well, we had a chance to go downtown to the city center for Brussels, and they had their Christmas market, which I didn't even think was a thing.
There we go.
Oh my God, it was amazing. I mean,
I told you so.
I know, but I didn't know. You told me, and I found out from all these people that it was. And then a lot of people that, of course, that were there in Brussels said, "Oh, well, Brussels has the best Christmas market in Europe." And I'm like, "Oh, there's other ones." And I feel so ignorant that I didn't know
city.
that every major place has a Christmas market, which, if you don't know, are basically unique foods and crafts and all wines and beers and all set up. And lots of lights and lots of
it's beautiful
fun and music in the downtown area or the city center area. But the one thing that I love that you probably, I don't know if you would like it or not, but maybe you've had. Have you had hot wine before?
Oh, of course, absolutely. Mulled wine is fantastic.
Glue wine or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it was fantastic. I'm like, where was this all my life? Especially when it's 0 degrees out. I'm walking around with hot wine.
I'll bet your lovely wife liked that stuff too.
Oh. Yeah, we went back for more.
Yep.
But we didn't do the hot wine, and you can get a shot of rum or amaretto. We didn't do that. That's a next time thing. We got to go. Got to go add on to the Weinshot.
Oh, Christmas market. I miss it. That's one of the things I miss about traveling to London or Brussels or Stockholm. Oh, there was a great Christmas market in Stockholm. Yeah, just fantastic stuff. Just really, really lovely.
So good.
We
do
not do it well here. We do not.
The people are so nice. It's just that's the one thing because I saw
everybody's in a good mood and there's music and there's Christmas festivities and so many lights and it's just beautiful. It totally puts you into the Christmas mood.
It does, absolutely. And I saw in your Facebook, you were talking about how that one year you did all the traveling and.
Yeah,
whatever it was 15 and 16 because we were working together at the time.
That's right.
You're doing all the traveling for consulting, and you're like, wow, that was a different reality back then. But
205,000 miles. Yeah, that was something.
That's a record. I mean, for you,
it wasn't a record. No, the record was 2019. The record 2019 was 235, I think.
No way.
It was. Yeah, it was.
I've never come close to that. I think I've broken six figures. For sure, especially when we were doing Content Marketing World Sydney and you and I were traveling to Singapore.
Well, that's that 202015, 2016 time frame, yeah.
So I was up closer to you then, but I still never traveled as much as you did.
Yeah, it's so much cross country, right? I never had any, still to this day, have very few West Coast clients. They're either Europe or East Coast, not by any design, just the way it was. And so it was so many cross country flights. And then, yes, Australia, and then Korea, and Singapore, Japan. Mm-hmm. You're all over Europe, of course. Yeah, I'm 10% of that now. I'm 10 or 15% of that now.
Good for you.
Much happier for it. Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, we're so far in the show that we can't talk about football. I'm sorry.
No,
Robert.
It's fine. It's fine. I'm sure.
I don't want to talk about it
I'm sure it's
anymore.
Fine for you. Yeah, I am absolutely sure it's fine for you.
Well, you make it to the playoffs, and then we'll talk about your Cowboys.
That's right.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens over the next couple of weeks. It's going to be very, very interesting. But we do have a fun show for you. We're going to talk about a few things in breaking news, actually, over the last couple of days. Federal lawmakers here in the U.S. have introduced a bipartisan bill, which is saying something for here in the U.S., to ban TikTok. We've been talking about this, and especially Joe has been talking about this, so we'll talk a little more about it and talk about the implications of what is happening now on the Hill. We'll talk about, of course, our Muskie Scent segment with Twitter. There's a couple of new news items that we can talk about, which are mostly what's going on with Elon really changing things up, not changing things up, and there's something that maybe there's a reason for that, and we'll talk about some of the interesting things that are going on there this week. If we get time, we'll talk about Jellysmack and how it's smacking off 8% of its workforce. That sounded ruder than it needed to be. And then if we also have time, we'll talk about media companies and how they're struggling to act like technology companies. We often talk about the reverse. Interesting new article that's talking about the Washington Post and its ongoing challenge with technology, which I've covered on this show before. Yep. And then we'll get to rants and raves, of course, and I will rant and rave a little bit about how agencies, especially the New York ad agencies, are looking for new revenue models in a challenging time. And Joe will continue our discussion about the Muskie Scent and talk about Elon and Tesla, actually, and what's going on with Elon and his sort of, I guess, cashing out for various reasons. So a chock-a-block full of shows, I think.
It's a good way to put it.
Good stuff.
And we'll
chock-a-block.
Smack the heck out of this show.
A mulled wine fill of the show. Let's get to the first story, if we will, and it comes to us courtesy of The Hill, which is a relatively conservative publication that covers the Hill, the American Congress. And the headline here is that the Senate votes to ban TikTok use on government devices. We will couple this with another story coming straight from CNN, where it is U.S. lawmakers have now introduced a bill full stop to ban TikTok. I'll read that one first, which opens up by saying a trio of U.S. lawmakers has introduced, wouldn't it be have introduced?
Yeah, I think
a trio
it would.
has introduced. No, it's okay. All right.
Okay.
I'm wrong. No? A trio of U.S. lawmakers has introduced new legislation that aims to ban TikTok from operating in the United States. The new bill by Senator Marco Rubio, the top Republican and Senate Intelligence Committee, I don't like that guy, and a bipartisan pair of congressmen in the House reflects the latest escalation by U.S. policymakers against the Chinese-owned short-form video app. TikTok has faced doubts about its ability to safeguard U.S. user data from the Chinese government. The proposed legislation would block and prohibit all transactions in the United States by social media companies with at least 1 million monthly users that are based in or under the substantial influence of countries that are considered foreign adversaries. I mean, that's written for TikTok, but obviously it is a feeble attempt at trying to make this a broader than just one company bill. The article goes on, of course, to talk about the legislation itself and ByteDance and some of the history behind that. And then, of course, we'll pair that with the Hill's article on the fact that the Senate has already now voted to ban TikTok for use on government devices following a number of states that have done so and that we've covered on this show. Here we go, Joe. What do you I mean, what is your take? I think this is probably pretty big news for TikTok consumers like me and creators for sure who are building either their rented house or in some cases all their houses on TikTok's land.
Well, it's interesting how this happened because let's see, the last 3 episodes we've just had South Dakota, and then we had Utah, and everyone's the government employees were banned from using those devices, if not already. It's like, okay, well, you and I were saying, okay, we're starting to see the breadcrumbs. This could lead into something. I honestly didn't expect it would happen this fast.
I didn't either.
And so this is different than the bluster, I think, of the Trump administration when he was going on and on about this. And we thought that TikTok was going to get purchased by, I think, then Oracle. And there was talk about Walmart and Oracle, all sorts of things. And then nothing happened with that, and it just kind of went away. And now more and more you're seeing this as China and United States sort of figure out how they're going to stage this information battle, if you will. And for those of you that don't know, China bans all U.S. social media apps already. So they've already looked at this as a national security issue. So now you have this group of lawmakers. I never knew that Marco Rubio's name was Rubio Blah. I did not know that's how you pronounced it, but thank you for
it is how you pronounce it. That's correct. That is
know that. But
it's the silent M-E-H in his name. Meh.
Yeah.
You get it's Rubio Meh.
But so there's a couple interesting things in this. First of all, on Wednesday, the Senate voted to, as you said, to ban TikTok on all government devices unanimously. Nothing ever happens unanimously. This is huge. This is everyone's on the same page with this one. And now they're taking into this bipartisan group to try to ban it. And by the way, I did read the actual bill.
You did?
I did.
Wow.
I read the actual bill, and it goes through what you said, and it makes it clear, like, oh yeah, that's definitely written for TikTok. But then it actually, at the end of it, mentions ByteDance and TikTok. Just in case you didn't get it before, they mention those companies. Well, this is the same company. It's just like, okay, they are definitely singling out TikTok, and I think this is seriously going to happen. And we've talked about, when did we start talking about it? 6 months maybe ago? We're like, hey, I'm starting to feel that this could be a thing. And here it is. It's going to happen. I don't know how quickly it's going to happen, but I almost feel like they're going to fast track this thing through. So if you are a brand using TikTok or you're a creator leveraging TikTok, if you're in the United States, you might not have that opportunity in the next couple months. How fast do you think something like this could work?
It can go very
quickly, but this seems
it can
to be
go very
quickly.
fast. Yeah, it can go very fast. The thing is, I don't think there's going to be a lot of lobbyists. As we talked about last week on the show, there are obviously tons of lobbyists on the other side from Meta, Twitter, every other company out there.
Microsoft, So Microsoft,
Google,
LinkedIn, Google.
All of them, right, are going to be going. Yeah, they're all going to be going, standing up and applauding and saying, "Yes, please, may I have another." So that will hasten things. Let's put it that way. They'll all be volunteering to help write this thing. because they all see the existential threat that TikTok provides. And I just don't think there's going to be a lot of, on the other side, trying to slow this down. Maybe some of the advertising lobbying, but I can't even imagine that they'll care that much. And in fact, they may be falling on the side of the other social networks anyway, because most of those don't really care where it's going. They just want to make sure the money continues to flow. So anything that makes things easier for money to flow into the advertising buckets, they'll support. So I could see this moving very, very quickly if they, and by the way, we predicted this, right? We said, look, once they get through, to me, this signals a couple of things. One is that they've gotten through the major January 6th stuff, and they're feeling good about where the election came out, and they're sort of feeling that they're through with that. And so now they're looking at taking on some of the things that were waiting in the wings. So you could see a lot of things start to pull through here in the let's say the waning days before the new legislators come in that start to really try and get over the dammed up gates or whatever they are of legislation. So I think you may see privacy bill too. You may see the privacy bill come to the forefront as well.
This is probably the best strategic move that Zuckerberg has made in a long time, right? I know.
Well, it's really interesting, right?
He wanted this to happen for a variety of reasons because he can't figure out that algorithm. And let's just look at what happens when TikTok goes away. There's two companies that benefit most from this: Meta and Google. YouTube Shorts starts to, okay, good. They can't figure out the algorithm. Okay, good. TikTok's gone. And same thing with Instagram. Yep. So they go right back on top again. I mean, if you were playing the stock market, not that I do, but if you were, you might buy Meta right now at a depressed level and say, hey, this is only going to help them more than anything else.
I'm hearing a lot of analysts saying exactly that. They're saying that Meta, and again, please, this is not a financial show. This is not, we offer no advice here, but the analysts that I've heard have talked about this idea, saying it's already undervalued, and all you have to believe for it to go up even a little bit at this point is that Zuckerberg can turn it around a little bit. In other words, that the numbers that they're making are already there. And if you believe that they will go up even a little bit, the number of advertising, the amount of advertising revenue, then it's undervalued. And it's a great buy. If you believe this, and that TikTok will ultimately have real challenges, I think there will be a deal at some point where, we'll see what happens with the way and there could be an acquisition here. But it'll be interesting to see how quickly Meta's stock turns around. And by the way, to your point, Google's as well.
Yeah, I would imagine the future of TikTok in the United States, and by the way, in the EU as well, because I talked to some people when I was in Brussels last week. We were talking a little bit about it, and most of the marketers over there thought that the EU leadership, the countries over there, would wait and see what the United States did. So, okay, now you see the U.S. go in that direction. EU is going to fall in after that, it seems, and you're going to see the Western world ban TikTok, unless, to your point, there's an acquisition and it's spun off, because that could have saved it at one. There was talk, when we about the whole Oracle thing happening, and there's like, oh, is it really owned by a U.S. company? Is it really fully divested from ByteDance, which is owned by, it's a Chinese company? There's a whole lot of stuff in there that we don't know about, but that's the only way to save it, in my opinion, at this point.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, well, we will see. We will see. It'll be
happening quickly. Who knows?
Happening very quickly.
This will go out Friday morning. Something might happen today. I mean,
you never know. You never know.
Yeah.
All right. Well, now it's time to move to our next story here, which is, of course, our regular segment, or what has become a regular segment on this show, which, of course, is the musky scent. And I failed this week in finding a song, so we'll have to continue to look for something to introduce our little segment here.
Do people really want that? People want a song?
I don't think they do. I do, but I don't think the people do. Yeah, the musky scent of Twitter.
We do. Yeah.
We
That's
want
all
it, but
that's
the
all that
audience
matters.
probably does not want it. This is going to come courtesy of the Business Insider. Interestingly, so a couple of weeks ago, Twitter killed off Review, which I was actually kind of sad about ultimately because I actually signed up for Review for a newsletter program that I wanted to launch, and I thought it was pretty good. And I thought it was really interesting of how you could integrate it with Twitter. And they've killed it, of course. And now the rumors are Elon Musk said he's open to buying the publishing platform Substack after a Twitter user said it would give him control of the narrative layer of the internet.
Come on.
Guys, just that's the most ridiculous. I mean, it doesn't surprise me that Business Insider covers it. But yes, there is the... and of course, Elon tweeted back and said he's open to that idea. Of course he did, because of course he did. So we can talk about that in just a second, but we'll pair that again with another story that comes out of the NBC News, feed. And the interesting thing here, this was an interesting point, and I actually have a take on this.
Okay.
The headline is Why Liberal Washington Can't Quit Twitter. The subheadline here is, they may hate Elon Musk, but they're not leaving Twitter yet. You'll have to pry my fingers from my phone, said one. The ad article opens up by saying, to tweet or to not tweet? That is the question many left-leaning and Elon Musk-loathing political influencers are debating, often on Twitter. Washington was one of the first places to grasp the potential power of Twitter, and it may be one of the last places to abandon it, as many raise concerns about the platform's new direction, despite the hand-wringing of its biggest blue-voting, blue-checked, marked users. As said one, Alex Vindman, the former Army Lieutenant Colonel and National Security Council official who was at the center of the Trump first impeachment, I'm just coming up with coping mechanisms for how I can still use this thing, he said. Vindman's first joined Twitter while working on the Trump administration because it was the way to get to his then boss, the president, and see how he made policy. But now he's become a pseudo-celebrity on the platform with 850,000 followers, et cetera, et cetera. And the article goes on to talk about a few others and how they are struggling with this, but they just can't quit. I mean, the Brokeback Mountain jokes are just right there. But the whole thing seems to be that the left can't really quit Twitter as it becomes more right-focused. I have a take on this, but I wanted to get sort of your thinking first on the Muskie scent. You know, what do you think about what's happened in the last week?
Well, first of all, the whole Substack thing is silly, and it's never going to happen, in my opinion. And he'll just say anything to get in the news.
Right.
So he's going to say, okay, yeah, I'll buy that. I'll buy that. Whatever. By the way, not the richest man in the world anymore. I'm going to talk a little bit about this in commentary. But
yeah,
if you go and look at political folks on Twitter, they're not going to. Like, why even talk about it? If it's working, they're going to have to use that platform. If it's working for you, you use it. I talk about that with any business. They say, oh, should I get off of Twitter? Should I stop? If it's working for you, stay on it. If it's not, don't. You know?
Right. It's that simple.
Yeah. So the whole thing is, oh, I don't want to use it because it's more whatever. That's all BS in my opinion. Are your constituents on there? Are you finding value in it in your business? Then you stay on it. It's what's your take with the whole liberal?
So I think it's interesting. I've heard a couple of analysts. I've been reading a lot about this, and I've heard a few analysts say that Elon's there seems to be two takes in terms of what Elon is actually doing with his nonsense. And the first take is that he's trying to drive down the value so that he can buy the debt on the cheap, which seems to be pretty far-fetched to me, and some of the analysts have said the same thing, that the banks aren't going to be that dumb. They're just going to continue to say, yeah, just pay our interest payment,
sure,
Elon. So they're not going to buy into
$1 billion plus a year in interest.
That's
payments.
right. That's right. Yeah. So they're not going to buy into the whole he's driving down the value to sort of fake everybody out that he's destroying the thing. The second take, which is he's trying to reformat and build let's call it independent, right, for the moment, as he would, a free speech which leans more to the right, because he certainly leans more to the right. He's trying to build a platform that is actually a successful version of what Truth Social or Parler might be, a right-leaning platform. here's the thing. I think that could be the case, but I think if you look at it in its simplest form, what he needs are people fighting. The whole thing about free speech, the whole thing about being the public town square, the whole thing about this being a place where you want to, create all kinds of activity around speech and issues and people conversing with one another, is these days anyway, you need the tension. You need people fighting with each other, because that's what generates clicks. That's what generates the activity. That's what generates
interest.
Threads. That's what generates everything. And so if he realizes that the majority of people on Twitter are either in the middle, if there's sort of a bell curve, it might lean slightly to the left or had leaned slightly to the left, and giving surface now more to that right, sort of moves the bell curve more toward either center or center right? And so to do that means there's going to be a lot more sort of ugly fighting, but lots and lots of activity, lots and lots and lots of activity. And I think some of the numbers even support this. I have not looked at the numbers lately, but what it seems to me is that there are fewer users, but there's more activity. And if he can do that, if he can create and foment that conversation, and that, I'm using conversation loosely here in quotes because it doesn't tend to be high quality conversation. But if he can foment that sort of activity, that does look a little more successful if he's trying to build something that would then be worth building up into another advertising platform, or something where there could be a subscription model attached to it. That's the best I've been able to come up with so far. And this kind of article is what sort of triggered me to think like this, because it's like, right, they're there and they can't let the conversation happen without them. They've built up these followings, 800,000, 100,000, 500,000 followers, all these quote unquote celebrities. It's really hard for them to let go of that audience, and it's really hard for them to let go of that reach into that audience for their own purposes. And for their own purposes, they need something to write about. And what would they write about is they can write about the bombs that are thrown into the middle of the table.
Yeah. So
he's actually attracting in those people. And so it's not actually a bad marketing strategy, I guess is my point.
Well, and I mean, I'm just looking it up right now. I mean, the users are up too. I mean, I think that if you looked at overall engagement and users since Elon took over, they're probably both up. The problem is that advertising is down 80%, so that business model is shot. So what do we?
Right. That's the gap.
Do?
That's the bet. Right. That's the bet, is that you can make that change and reattract the advertisers back to the platform. And I think that may be, if there's a huge flaw in this argument, that may be where it is, because he's got to be able to assure the brands of brand safety, that their ads aren't going to appear on horrific, right-wing or left-wing, quite honestly, profiles where hate speech is being mentioned, and he can't do that right now. And that's that's the biggest reason that advertisers are quitting, is because they just can't. He can't guarantee that right now.
But also, yes, I totally agree with you. But it's also the fact that Twitter's advertising just doesn't work as well as Facebook's or Instagram's.
No, of course, there's that too. There's that too. Yeah.
So it's almost an excuse. I mean, it's a really easy thing for a brand to say, "Oh, I'm leaving Twitter right now because of, there's no brand safety." Well, really, they wanted to leave anyways, because it's not working.
Sure, I think there's some of that. I mean, I am noticing. I'll tell you, I'm noticing ads a lot more than
noticing ads on Twitter a lot more.
Correct. Oh. There's definitely more ads now. I mean, that's anecdotal from my perspective. Now, I'm not writing on Twitter much. At all. I'm just viewing. Well, because I go in and I check the hashtag for story ideas, and I tend to heart a few call outs and stuff like that. I'm not responding to any of those, just because I made the decision, as you stated in the beginning, I made the decision about a month and a half ago that I didn't want to monetize that level of vitriol that was happening on Twitter. I didn't want my content monetizing it. So I've taken a pause, right? I've taken a pause on writing and posting on Twitter, but I'm still there, and monitoring and looking at it and all that because it's part of my job. And so that I've just started to notice a lot more ads than usual. I mean, if you believe this, if you believe that that the ads are actually contextual, there are a lot of companies that buy our hashtag. Like if you go search our hashtag this old marketing, there are usually two or three ads in that feed right at the top. So I don't know if they're buying our hashtag or if it just, it gets lumped in with marketing or something.
It's got to be dumb luck. It's just, there's no way somebody's purposely doing that.
No, but of course not.
I'll tell you, just to sum this whole thing up, from what I've seen in the last 3 weeks, the biggest winner in the whole Twitter fiasco is LinkedIn, and is not even close. I've seen so many people double down on
and
LinkedIn,
the post.
and it is
I would say, and the post. I would say the post is their growth is their which we covered.
I did get the sign up for that one. Are you using Post?
I'm waiting for my entree.
Oh, sorry.
I signed up for the thing. It's as usual. I was waiting for my blue check, and I'm waiting for my post. No, I signed up and I haven't gotten in yet, but I'm sure it will be coming forth.
Are you still bullish on Mastodon?
I am actually, yeah, but probably not for unless
different.
Things change.
It's not a Twitter.
It's very different. It's not a Twitter replace. That's my point. Yeah, is that I'm actually bullish on it for a number of reasons. I like it very much as a platform. But I don't think it's going to be a good Twitter replacement. I think it's better for networks of communities than it is for, and that's what it was built for. It wasn't built to be a Twitter replacement, but it's the whole federated model is an interesting one with great pros and quite a few cons as well.
My prediction on this one, and you've heard me say this before. Post and Mastodon and all the Twitter possible replacements out there. The replacement for Twitter, old Twitter, is new Twitter. Whatever new Twitter becomes or is, it's going to be Twitter.
That's right.
So no sense, in my opinion, looking for what the new Twitter is going to be. Just hang around for a couple months and see whatever this is, and that's what they're going to be on.
Yeah.
It's just got such a head start. So many people already there, and it's working for a lot of people. So done.
Exactly. All right, one quick story, because I know you have a quick point on this that you want to sort of lay down as a data point here. This comes to us courtesy of Business Insider, and it's about Jellysmack, which I didn't even know was a thing, but you'll educate me on that. Creator economy startup Jellysmack has laid off 8% of its staff amid concerns of an ad downturn. Here's the email the co-founder sent to the employees. The article goes on to explain how Jellysmack, a creator economy startup, has now laid off 8% of its employees, which is a meaningful number given how small they are. Jellysmack's leadership also told employees it planned to cease some international operations, and they sent what was generally considered a relatively kind email laying off the folks, but you're looking at the broader picture here. I think.
It's just another data point. Jellysmack, they're trying to help content creators monetize. They really focus on video creators, and what you saw in 20 and 21 was a lot of money, a lot of VC money go into a lot of these different companies, and there was so much competition so quickly, so much money flying around, and you're just starting to see everyone pull back a little bit. But what you're not seeing, the companies that are very successful are the podcast distribution companies, the email distribution companies. Though basically they've got they're focusing on regular marketing services type entities, that businesses that have already been out there. Great, I can go, and it's beyond the creator economy. It's just small businesses, whatever. But I think when you see a lot of these companies that are going after a lot of very small pieces of revenue from a large number of people, that they think, the creator economy is 300 million people. It takes a long time to get there. So I think you're just seeing a lot of this being weeded out right now. It's totally fine.
What did they do? What did Jellysmack, or what does Jellysmack
They'll
do?
go ahead. I don't know all the ins and outs of Jellysmack, but I believe what they do is they help video creators monetize through brand deals.
I see. Sort of like an intermediary.
Yes.
Right? An intermediary to say, you come into our network, and then we'll pair you up with ads, and then brands can come in and buy tranches of content creators and have their ads appear on those content creators.
Let's just go and say it. So basically, Jellysmack Creator Program, it says, helps hundreds of the world's leading creators expand their brand presence and maximize earnings by putting their videos on multiple social platforms. So in this case, it sounds like it's a video distribution. Yeah. So
all right. Well, I mean, distribution.
No. Yeah. I mean,
okay.
It goes back to our TikTok thing though too. I mean, all this time that is spent by creators and marketers listening to this right now, we're putting so much into these platforms that may or may not be around, or may not care, or may not change the rules. And that's just a tough place to be right now if we're distributing social media content. I met with a small business yesterday. Then they have a very specific angle in financial services, and they wanted to. How do they build an audience and go? And they said, where do I need to be on social media? And I was honest. And I can't believe I said this, Robert. I said, honestly, you don't need to be on social media. I'm like, whoa. They're like, what? Are you kidding me? It's like, you really don't. You don't have to focus on building all these audiences on social media. If you already have a customer base and you believe that if you distribute amazing content to that customer base and get those customers to share with people just like them, their network, you might be okay just doing that. And they just didn't believe me, but it's absolutely true. You don't have to be on social media to survive. Now, if you maximize one or two platforms really well and can figure out from a content distribution standpoint and get people to sign up for your emails or listen to your podcast, great, right? You and I have benefited from, pretty good social media audiences that's driven to our own properties. Wonderful.
Sure. Yep.
But do you have to do that today? No. What was it? For 2006, 2007, people were saying, hey, you don't need a website. You just have to be on Facebook.
Right.
Well, shoot, that would have worked out horrible, wouldn't it?
Ooh, that would be bad.
Yeah. So I guess I'm just saying, okay, if you got all your ducks in a row and you're working all your own properties, you've got a really good strategy there. Secondarily, then you look at your video distribution on all these other platforms.
I think that's right. It's interesting to me because distribution is not the hard part, right? That's what's so interesting when I see some of these new startups that are really taking on some of there's been a lot of, let's call it innovation in quotes, around the content creator economy in terms of the solutions being provided to both brands and content creators that are really best. And this happened, by the way, in the early 2000s too, during the .com, that are features, not applications. They're not solutions. They're best served as features within other applications. And in many cases, some of these companies realize this. They're conscious of that. And what they're doing is they're trying to build the coolest version of that feature ever, with the sole intention of being acquired by a bigger company that needs that feature for their suite of products or whatever it is. But I think what you're seeing in here is an overeagerness, like you said, of funding a lot of these companies that are now well ahead of their skis in terms of how big the issue or challenges they're actually solving. And what we're finding now is that it's really not something that is primary and or critical for a content creator to solve right now, right? And those things are front and center for any content entrepreneur, but it's really tough, right? You say this all the time, which is you have to build your audience before you monetize your audience, right? You have to. What was it you were talking about the other day? We were chatting, and you were saying everybody always talks about this idea of, right, build a community, build your audience, and then, okay, now the real challenge here is monetizing that audience, and you have to do it through advertising, you have to do it this, and everybody sort of skips over that sort of step number one, which is that, no, you actually have to build that audience before you monetize it.
Oh, let me rant on this for a little bit. So I get a very nice person. I got a LinkedIn request. It's like, oh, I know your buddy, and he told me to get in contact with you. I've got a podcast, and I'm looking to launch a sponsorship program. So before I reach back, he sent me the link to the podcast, and I went and looked at it. Well, it's been around for 2 years, had like 4 episodes in 21 and like 6 episodes in 22, and just whenever. Just
Right.
like, and
Right.
I could tell, I know that there's no audience there. I absolutely know. So you're ready to look at sponsors and you're not even doing the hard work here to build the
That's
audience.
right.
And so I was trying to be nice, and I just said, okay, here's a book that'll tell you most of the things.
Right.
Why don't you get that book? Content Inc. is the one I recommended. I said, go ahead and look at it. And then if you have any additional questions, I'm happy to help you. But I already know the problem. You haven't even built an audience enough to monetize it.
You haven't built a product yet. Yeah, that's exactly
There's nothing to sell here. Unless
the content is not the product. The audience is the product. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So, what else?
All right. Well, let's get to our rants and raves section. And this is, of course, where we go off on a little bit of a rant or a little bit of a rave that makes us feel like we own a couple of crypto dads or a couple of Bored Ape NFTs, or that we own a couple of Bored Ape NFTs and are getting sued for it. So before we get to our rants and raves, of course, we want you to go check out our little home on the web, our owned media property, as it were, thisoldmarketing.site, where we can answer questions. You can listen to other shows. You can click on any of the links from any of the show notes and get to the stories that we talk about. And of course, you can leave reviews and you can forward it off to people for them to subscribe. And if you haven't gotten that perfect Christmas gift for somebody yet, somebody that you love, get them the gift that keeps on giving. Two chuckleheads talking every week about the musky scent of Elon. And you could even put that in your Christmas card. Hashtag us up, won't you, at This Old Marketing on Twitter. We love those story ideas. We need those story ideas. Please, 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 we love you so much. Thank you very much for your participation and everything you've done this year. And with that, do you want to go first, or shall I go first?
Mine's really quick, and it's just
okay.
And not that I want to keep banging on this Elon Musk drum. And you've been listening to some of this on the Prof G podcast as well, but I'm just amazed by what's happening to Tesla as a company right now. Tesla, which is right now, and I think in a precarious position, nothing to what Elon is doing, but the fact that you have basically every other car manufacturer is coming out with a competitive product to Tesla. It's been that way for a couple of years. Now you've got the Fords and the GMs and the Chryslers and every other company that are actually coming out with some really interesting electronic cars out there. Well, Elon has gotten into, as we've talked about, this whole Twitter thing. And since that's happened, Tesla shares have fallen 30%. And I think that's just the start. I think it will continue to drop. And that's what happens when you have somebody, leadership, specifically in this case, the CEO, Elon Musk of Tesla, take their eye off the ball from a strategy standpoint and focus it on Twitter, a very small piece of a company that is pulling down the value of Tesla. And if you look at the brand value scores of Tesla, they've all come down since Elon Musk took over Twitter. I'm under the assumption that Elon Musk spends a much smaller percentage of time on focusing on the strategy of Tesla than he did before, because he's on Twitter all the time, basically getting in arguments with other people. I can't believe that you're letting this $600 billion company by market cap, Tesla, just wither away. And you're watching this. By the way, I think it went out today that Elon had to sell another $3 or $4 billion of Tesla stock because he's got to cover all this other stuff that's going on with Twitter. This is just ridiculous. This could, if it's not corrected, go down as one of the worst mistakes by a founder ever, if he just lets Tesla degrade like this. And I'll just bring it back to my keynote that I gave in Brussels. One of my things that I've been talking about for a while is basically kill your darlings. You time to start killing stuff. And if you look at Content Marketing Institute research, they'll tell you that the average enterprise distributes content on basically 13 to 16 different ways. And I said, there's no way that's working. There's just too many. You can't be great at all these things. And it's the same thing is happening here to Elon, where he's spreading himself too thin and he's not great. So my little reminder to everyone as you're going into 2023 is maybe not form a resolution or things you can add to your plate, but try to discontinue, as I like to say, some things going into 23 that you can stop doing so that you can have a more productive 23. So
everybody remember your Michael Porter.
Yes. What's the quote?
Basically, just as important are the things that you do not do.
You do not do. As he goes, basically, strategy is about saying no to things. Yes,
that's right. Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, I have two very quick ones here that we'll link to in the show notes. The first is coming from Ad Age, and this is just me being jealous, is what it really is. I mean, let's just call it what it is. The article that we'll link to is that the Martin Agency, which is a big agency, been around for a number of years, has named Tasha Dean a chief revenue officer, so a newly created position for them, basically to reinvent how the agency gets paid. Basically, really to figure out new revenue streams, and much in they I'm sure took your book, Joe, and opened it up to the Disney page and put that on the wall, because when you hear what they're thinking about, it is all of those things. And it's interesting that they are very much thinking about becoming a media company. So there is a real initiative here you can see to get into what we would call content marketing. I am absolutely positive they do not. But they're looking at how, for example, they can get into intellectual property creation. So, for example, they're thinking about writing children's books. They're thinking about audio. They're thinking about creating iconic creative for animation. And they're also thinking about other revenue streams, such as, this is where it gets kind of goes off the rails for me, things like working with brands to say we should get royalties on the commercials that are run. I don't think that's going anywhere, but I guess the interesting thing to me, sort of on the sort of positive side of things, is that I think this is a fascinating strategy, and a good one, by the way, for agencies to really look at. It's something that I encourage agencies all the time to look at, which is diversifying revenue streams into they're built to be creative. They're built to have technological prowess. They're built to have project management and product management built into so they're built to create interesting, innovative media properties, and they should, and really try and drive revenue. I've seen a few agencies really kill it with this. Small agencies that have built everything from e-commerce stores to media properties to other things that really draw in and diversify their revenue stream. So 100% behind it. I guess I'm just a little jealous that Tasha Dean and Martin Agency has a great PR person, because this seems to me in Ad Age to be like, really? This is really just a press release that has been repurposed for as an article. I mean, it might as well have been the press release, just verbatim. So it's a little, I don't know. I'm like I said, I'm just jealous. I just look at this and go, wow. Ad Age used to have like news and cover stuff with like journalism and stuff, and now it's not. It's now just
is the Martin Agency that big that it gets?
Yeah, they're pretty big. Yeah, they're pretty big. They're well known. I'll say that. Okay. They're well known. They're well. The Martin Agency is well known and has a lot of high level clients and those sorts of things. And they're well known, and I mean they're well known in the Ad Age circles, right? I mean they're that sort of thing. But it's so love the idea. The fact that it's a press release in Ad Age annoys me, because I'd like Ad Age to be more journalistic, but I don't know. There you go. The second thing I'll mention briefly, which was something you sent me actually, and we covered on the show, I don't know, 6 months ago, 8 months ago, maybe a year ago. Yeah. Was Washington Post launched a technology product, CMS, a content management system. And I, at the time, because that's my background, my entire background was in software development in the content management space, enterprise content management space. I was fascinated by this because at the time what I said was it's the biggest CMS company you've never heard of, because they're making millions of dollars off of this enterprise content management technology, selling it to other companies, the Washington Post. And they have another one, which is their ad tech, which I've seen some of their folks present before, and the ad tech that they have is also, it's called Zeus. It's actually quite impressive. So they're, as a technology company, Washington Post is actually really interesting. What we'll link to in the show notes is Simon Owen's media newsletter, by the way, a fantastic newsletter if you haven't gotten it. And Simon talks about why media companies like Washington Post, using them as an example, are struggling to really operate as tech companies, which is very much, here we go, right? Ad agencies acting like media companies acting like technology companies, and this struggle is real with these switches as we start looking at it. And the execution here is what's at play, because the reason that he wrote this article was because I guess Washington Post is thinking about divesting themselves of Zeus, the ad tech platform, and looking at spinning out the entire technology, the CMS company, as its own company. I have to tell you, I think my take on it, my hot take on it, without knowing any of the details, is that both things are a bad idea. I would figure out a way to make them work within the company itself, because the complaint is that they're not getting nearly enough attention, and it's really hard to market it as from the Washington Post, and it's really hard to get reach into new audiences for this technology, being that you're selling it from the Washington Post. I actually think, as a marketing guy, it's a differentiator in the marketplace. I'm just going to be really frank here. The content management business sucks right now. It's hard because there are 1, 2, 3 players max that are really, driving the market right now. Number one is Adobe in the enterprise space. And so it's hard. It's a difficult business to be in. But I think, honestly, the Washington Post having a brand behind their CMS system is a differentiator, not a ball and chain weighing them down. So I would go the other way with it, but that's just me. Anyway, fantastic article covering this. Wanted to call attention to it, and I think it's a really interesting thing to follow for media companies that are looking to drive technology solutions. By the way, this goes for agencies too. Agencies that develop technology. It's hard. They're different businesses, but ultimately, as my friend Joe Polizzi says, it's all the same business. It's how do you attract an audience that wants to buy your stuff.
Do you agree that them spinning it off would work, WAPO?
No, I think they should keep it.
You're saying it's a differentiator. They should just figure out
lean into it. I would lean into the Washington Post doing this. I would lean into very much like Amazon Web Services, right? I would Amazon Web Services this stuff. I would talk about why one of the things that Amazon did so brilliantly when it launched Amazon Web Services was to lean into, we had to do all this stuff ourselves to scale the way we did, so therefore just think what we can do for you. That was kind of the messaging in the early days of AWS.
Yeah. And
people bought into it. And the product was good, let's be honest. The product was amazing. In the early days of AWS, I can remember signing up for their email engine. I remember signing up for their cloud computing. We as a company, as a startup company, signed up for the infrastructure, the hosting, the cloud hosting services. And it was unbelievably scalable and brilliant. And the reason was because Amazon had to build it for themselves. It was like the way they had to build logistics for themselves, so they got to be experts at it. And in the same way, Washington Post has to have become experts in managing huge, huge levels of dynamic content and have gotten really good at it. And I have not personally seen, but I have heard that their content management system is actually quite good. And I think, for me, I would lean into that whole thing. I would lean into it and build an entire technology division for Washington Post, and Amazon Web Services that stuff. So that's just, me.
I totally agree with that take. I mean, when I was running Pet and Custom Media, we used to come up against competitors that said, "Oh yeah, you can't, you don't want to go with Pet and Custom Media because they don't do what we do full time. They're actually part of a B2B publisher, and it's just a side, it's just a side department, whatever. It's like we focus on this all the time." And I used to come in and say, "This is what we do. We do this for real. We are publishers." So we know this better, so you fight that back and forth. But I agree, you can go either direction, but you can absolutely lean into it.
The thing to me that is so interesting is that they have a template, right? Because exactly what you're saying is the risk. I see this all the time in companies that are offering up products or want to offer up products that are corollary, not really core to what they do. And this is clearly the case here. But they have the most brilliant template in the way that Amazon did it. And honestly, the owner of Washington Post is Bezos, so he knows exactly how they did it. And so the struggle is to how do you lean into it and not make it a side hustle for the business, right? How do you make it a core piece of what it is you're doing? Now, that may be what they mean by spin it out, They may spin it out as a division of Washington Post or something like that. That may be what they ultimately mean here. So I don't, that's where I go, okay, I don't. But personally, from a brand and marketing perspective, I would lean into the Washington Post brand. I would not spin it out of its own company, with its own brand, with its own. That's the perfect way to make it die in oblivion, right? Is to try and raise the profile of yet another CMS system out there that doesn't have any ties to a big brand.
True. Yeah. Instead of spinning it off and saying we've got our biggest customer is Washington Post.
Yeah, well, among others, I mean, they've got an incredible client list that you only know because you go to their website and look at, but they've got real companies on this thing, so it's not a new thing. It's been around for a few years. It's a well tested. But here's the thing: the analysts don't cover it. It's not generally covered in the content management press. None of that stuff is covered because they aren't. It's a side hustle for them right now. And so if they're trying to really make it a thing, which I think, again, they should, they would lean into that and sort of make it, we are competing with Adobe.
Yeah. As again, you're right. You're right, but they don't listen to you. What is wrong with them?
They don't.
They don't listen to this podcast.
They
don't
don't
listen to you.
Yeah. What do you got coming up this week?
Well, work-wise, working on budgets for next year, kind of fun stuff. We got some speaker announcements coming out for Creator Economy Expo, so I'm very excited about that. We're
nice.
Way ahead of where we were last year at this point, so I'm very excited about the event in May, and then getting ready for the holidays. Lots of family stuff coming up. So and of course Browns games in there somewhere.
Yes, of course. Yes.
But
to fit those in.
Thing. So what do you got going
Fit those in. You have to fit in the disappointments in your life.
Exactly. It can't be all happy. It can't be all good tidings. So.
That's right. Well, we're just wrapping up the year here. We're heads down with a lot of client work right now, trying to wrap things up before the middle of next week, as I said. Then take a little time off and figure out. You and I have to figure out our recording schedule for what we're doing over the holidays here. But it's all going to be good, and really looking forward to it. And that's not for you to figure out, folks. That's for us to figure out. We will figure that out, but we will be back next week. And until next week, just remember, everybody, it is your story to tell. Tell it well. We will see you next week, one way or the other, on This Old Marketing.